people were like, no, let's sit down, let's look you over. And they took off my jacket, and I just was gushing blood.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. We usually do them outside on the porch, and that seemed like a bad idea tonight, so we are not quite set up for inside. So it was either here or on the balcony over there, which felt a little imperial, and so here we are. This is fun. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, do you feel old enough to have a book that you had to update for inflation? That seems crazy to me.
Well, considering this is the 4th edition, yeah. I mean, when I started 20 years ago, I just think about how much travel has changed over the years. And, 20 years, you're going to have a lot of inflation. And I think, post-COVID, everything has become so much more expensive that it was just time for a new book.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Like, how much obviously 20 years, we met when the book had just come out, I think, which was like 10 or 11 years ago, right?
12 years, 2013.
Okay. And I was thinking, obviously just stuff gets more expensive over time. But how much of that do you think is inflation, and how much of it is just like travel has just become more expensive? Like skiing is not more expensive because of inflation. It's because they've decided that people will spend an unlimited amount of money to go skiing. And so a lift ticket is like $500 to go skiing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Disney tickets are not more expensive because of inflation. They're more expensive because they figured out they can just make people pay a lot of money for stuff.
I mean, you could go to Japan. I did go to Japan and go skiing, rentals, lift ticket, 4 days, $150.
Still?
Yeah, I went last year.
Okay.
Like covering like the lift tickets, I rented everything, even like ski clothes, $150. And so I think a lot of it is a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened during COVID is so many travel companies went under. Mm-hmm. And the ones that survived, especially the brick and mortar hostels, and took on a lot of debt. And so during that time, they're raising prices to cover the debt. And they found that, as the industry called it, I don't know why, but they called it revenge travel.
Yeah.
After COVID, everyone was like going out there, and they found people didn't really care if they had to spend a lot of money. And so they just kept the prices high. And now that has become a new normal.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it was a choice. Like prices go up, but there was just so much demand. And we all think of airlines that have algorithms that control pricing, but a lot of hotels adopted that kind of algorithmic pricing, as well as hostel chains. So the computers were just like, well, people are going to keep paying it. And so unfortunately, like without, AI.
Yeah, I think when you have a segment of and this is a product, I guess, of income inequality, but when you have a segment of the market that's essentially not price conscious at all, it sort of skews the algorithm and the price of everything in the world, because it feels crazy if you're running a business to not charge those people the most they would pay. And then what that does is it raises the average price for everyone else. So I guess, do you find that what that then requires to be a good traveler is you just have to do even more work than you did before? Like you have to be much more discerning and figure out how to not fall into those traps. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, it's definitely become harder to be a budget traveler beyond just the natural inflation of everything. I mean, if you're going to Europe in peak season, you'll find hostel dorm rooms, for $60, $70 a night, and so it requires a lot more research, and there's a lot more localization. Before COVID, you had these like gigantic global companies that would offer discount passes and STA travel that would give you round the world tickets, and not all, but 90% of those companies went away during COVID. So what has come in place is a lot more hyper-localized companies. So one that's just for France, one app that's just for New Zealand. And so you have to do more research and find these more local companies.
How has it been for you? Because you obviously started as a budget traveler, but then as your business succeeded and you succeeded and you got older, I'm sure staying in a $10 a night hostel became less attractive to you. So how have you sort of struck that balance between sort of doing it as cheap as you can, and then also why do it cheaper than you need to? How do you think about that?
I've always thought the budget travel less about being cheap and more about being frugal. And
What's the difference?
I think cheap is always looking for the lowest price possible, where being frugal is making sure you're not overspending while still spending money on the things that are important to you. You know, so for example, I am the friend that's like, it's not far, we can walk, and the walk is like an hour and a half, right? Because like, I'll just do the walk, right? Rather than spend money on the taxi. I love free tours rather than paid, like an expensive paid tour. Whereas one thing that has happened as I got older, I definitely spend more money on accommodation. But I'm making sure that I'm getting the best value for that. I use a lot of points and miles for hotels, for flights. And so I think looking at things these days is really just about making sure you're getting the best price while using, you know, the new resources to make sure that you're also finding the free stuff, finding ways to save money, finding budget deals. And one of the things that has really come out of COVID and this new age is that Facebook groups have become a really good way to find locals who will house you for free, as well as like it's like new couch surfing, but they'll also like show you around town and like kind of give you advice. So like you have like a local inn who can be like, oh, this place has a really good happy hour, you know, don't go to that place that's touristy, come here, you know. So knowing these new ways is really important to being sort of a budget traveler.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, like, what are your sort of go-tos when you want to find something about a place you're going? Like, where are you finding, whether it's deals or, you know, undiscovered gems? Like, what do you find is the best way to find out about stuff?
These days, I think there's like three great ways. First would be local tourism boards. Most people don't go into the local tourism office when they're traveling, and I think that's a huge mistake because that place is staffed by people who live in the city. So just asking them, hey, when you're off work, like, where do you go hang out? You're going to find a lot of really great responses.
Yeah.
Second, local Instagrammers or TikTokers, like, they sort of know the hot new stuff in any city, and, you know, just send them a DM. And so the localization of the create, like when I started, it was very much like I was a budget traveler and I blogged about the world, but now people are very hyper niche, and I think that's a really good
You
source.
can do that for Germany, or you could do that for some region in Texas, that someone can support themselves or have a decent sized following being an expert on a very specific area, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. You want to go to Uzbekistan, there's going to be somebody in Uzbekistan that has a blog, a TikTok, and just talks about Uzbekistan.
Should I go to Uzbekistan?
100%. It's very beautiful.
What should I do there?
A lot of hiking. Yeah.
Was that three things? What you said?
No. The third thing is, again, this rise of Facebook groups.
Okay.
So, like, my favorite one is Find a Travel Buddy. It's the biggest one. You can just say, hey, I'm going to Uzbekistan or somewhere else, and you'll get a lot of people who will suggest things to do, see, and get off the beaten path. And even probably someone that lives in the area who will give you advice.
What do you think about AI? How has AI changed, like, how you would plan a trip or look for things? Or
I think right now, at this moment, AI is not really there for planning a trip. I've tested all these AI bots to be like, plan me a trip to New York, and they'll be like, oh, you should do X, Y, Z. I'm like, that restaurant isn't good. That restaurant went out of business 4 years ago. That's just my blog post.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's just pulling from existing travel content, and it doesn't have the human touch that I think we really want from someone. We want someone to tell us what the experience is like, and AI can't do that. Where I think AI will make a really big difference in travel is the booking process. You'll give it all the parameters you want, and you'll say, hey, AI bot, we're going to Rome, and book us a hotel. And it will know everything you've liked and have done, and it will just book a hotel for you.
Yeah, like I'm going to Greece this summer, and we're doing a road trip through it. And it's like, these are the 8 places that I want to go, and I'm like, what is the most efficient mileage or route to do that thing? So that's a complex math problem as opposed to what's the best restaurant in these cities. Yeah. But it can tell me, no, you want to do it in this order and not that order because it saves time and cuts off, needless delays or whatever.
Yeah, and then you'll be like, great, book me a car, yes. for 4 people, and we'll do that, and we'll be all set. But it can't convey like why you should go to this town, like what makes that place magical. And if it is, it's just telling you from like a travel blog like mine or some article it's read. So it's just not there because like travel is so much about the human experience that AI can't replicate that.
Although it's like, when you look for a recipe online and then you want to know how to cook the thing and then they're telling you their whole fucking life story.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's too much human touch in these things and you just want the best way to do the thing.
Yeah. Well, that's why you have it for the route. Yes. Like it tells you the best route, It's like the recipe. Yeah, I just want that.
Yeah, how long does this go in the oven? I don't need to know where you were born.
Yeah. Well, before I tell you that, let me tell you about how my grandmother's oven.
Yes, exactly. How has it changed your business? Like, it must be weird because I know you do guides and you go painstakingly on the ground and you check all the stuff that when you're saying I like this versus that, you actually sweat or bled and that you got blister. Like you did the work to make the recommendation between this or that, and there's obviously not any. There's no skin in the game for a large language model telling you why you should go here or not go here.
Where it's really hit me is in terms of search engine traffic, because all like Google and all these other search engines are moving to just an AI generated answer.
Yeah.
And so that has really taken a lot of my traffic away.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting as many people to visit my website. Whereas like ChatGPT or I forget what Google says, Gemini, I think it is. The people start there, but they still end up emailing me or finding me on social media. So right now, especially because a lot of the information is still kind of inaccurate, people still come to me. But that lead generation of the search engine is greatly diminished for me and all people in the travel industry.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's kind of becoming like in the music business where it's like you got to go buy a shirt if you want to support the band, not just stream it because they don't make any money from that.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm thinking about it, it's like if I'm just reading this thing at the top and not clicking the people whose work actually informed that thing, you're not just exposing yourself to potentially inaccurate information, but you're also sort of depriving the people who were the creators of that.
It's a great existential crisis right now among the creator world, whether they're traveler or not, but especially in travel. A lot of people are leaving because like Google has taken so much of their traffic. They're looking at becoming travel agents for planning. They're looking for more high touch ways to earn a living and connect with their audience. Because before it was just passive, like come to the website, I make some ad revenue, you click a link. With AI taking traffic away now, and soon enough, I think booking revenue, I think it will be
like the affiliate stuff.
Yeah. So like you'll tell your AI bot to book the car rather than come to my website, click the link, and I don't get that commission. I think people are looking for ways to just connect with their community more, like the T-shirt, run the tour, buy the book, donate to like my Patreon or something like that.
Yeah, there's a thing in the news business called the Gell amnesia effect. And basically, it says that when you interact with the media on something you know a lot about, you go, oh, this isn't very accurate or good. And then you hear them report about something you know nothing about, and you go, oh, sure, I believe you. And I as people are sort of experimenting and learning with AI, what I would encourage people to do is like go screw around with it in something you know a lot about, right? And then you can see, oh, it's not, you can see that, okay, it's hallucinated this over here. It's made a really bad recommendation over here. This thing is contradictory. This doesn't make sense. That's not true. And then you're, I think, going to be a little bit more hesitant to go, yeah, I'll outsource my one family vacation to this same thing that, by the way, doesn't, I know for a fact isn't knowledgeable about things that I'm knowledgeable about, or not at the level that I am. It's a lot. Again, if you're taking one family vacation or one trip, or you're getting legal advice, like it's not that the AI stuff is bad. It's that it's mediocre or pretty good. And if you don't know enough to be able to discern between okay and like bet your life on this,
Yeah.
that's a big thing to trust a vacation on, or a trip, or going to where you're going to go spend your anniversary dinner or not.
Yeah, it's still drawing from travel websites that might not have been updated in years. And so I have done what you have said, and like I've asked it to plan me trips. I've even asked it for my own biography, and it gets it wrong. Like where I've gone to school, it's told me I've had a podcast. I'm like, I don't get a podcast. Where'd you even get this?
No, it was telling me that I overcame dyslexia. Like it's told me things about. I was like, oh, this is news to me, right? Or I've asked it to, like, when I sometimes, like I'm writing and I go, that doesn't sound right. I'm gonna have it fact check this, and so I'll have it fact check something, and it'll be like, it is true, and I go, that doesn't sound right. I go, and you go, is that true? And then it'll give you another answer that just contradicts the last one. And then you go, I'm really not sure. And it'll give you a third answer. And you realize, oh, there's actually something really insidious about a service or a technology that wants to answer you, that wants to please you. Because what it can end up doing is deceiving both itself and you. And so if you say, hey, is this a good time to go to France? It's gonna say yes, because or it's gonna tell you what it thinks you want it to say, not necessarily what's true. And what I've also found with a lot of these platforms is they're really bad at saying I don't know, or that's above my pay grade, or whatever, right? So again, that it's forcing an answer. Even the fact that if you tell it to take more time, it'll tends to do better. Right, so like they found if you say like take your time with this, it'll give you a better answer than if you just ask it. And so even there, you're like, okay, clearly your answer is being informed by how quickly you think I want an answer. And so again, this is a lot. That's a somewhat shaky system to put your, to send your teenager backpacking across Europe with.
I would not use AI to plan a trip just yet. It's just not there, because so much of it is relying on existing articles and content, and travel changes so frequently. I mean, that's why every year, in theory, like these guidebook companies update their guides, because so much changes. So if they're drawing from something that is even 3 years old, it could be way out of date. And, maybe it's not too out of date, and a national park, right? Not much is really changing in Yosemite, but like if it's like China, like things change real quickly there. I mean, just look at Austin. Information even 2 years ago is going to be out of date for a place like Austin.
Yeah, no, that's true. So as you've updated the book, what do you find? What are the things you find yourself changing the most, and what do you find doesn't change?
What changed would be, in the last edition, round the world tickets were a big part of how to get around the world really cheaply by airfare. Those don't really exist anymore. All these travel discount cards for backpackers, hostel groups, travel companies, all gone. Big networks for like STA travel, travel agencies that help people plan trips, those are gone. So more of the global stuff has really like disappeared. Whereas points and miles have really come into more play for finding cheap flights and cheaper accommodation. There's been the rise of Facebook groups, in part because old services like Couchsurfing or Be Welcome that allowed you to like stay with people for free and meet people paywalled themselves. So people don't really use them anymore because you can't even join for free. So a lot of the sharing economy stuff has changed. Something else that has really changed for the better is that there's way more free walking tours. So like before it was like big cities in Europe, but pretty much any big city in the world or medium-sized city is going to have a free walking tour of some sort, which is a great way to orientate yourself, ask a local, like, what should I do? And just kind of like get the history of the place.
Well, I want to ask everyone else some questions too, or have people ask questions. But since we're in a bookstore, let's talk travel books.
Okay.
What are the classics? What do you recommend? What do you think's overrated? Give me some travel book thoughts.
Classics: Innocents Abroad by Mark Twain, Vagabonding by Rolf Potts, In a Sunburned Country by Bill Bryson.
He's like the GOAT, right?
He's the GOAT. Yeah, he is the GOAT.
But he retired?
He did retire, yeah.
Yeah.
He right before COVID.
His road trip book across America, I forget what it's called, but like I think it was written in the early '80s. So it's
Notes from a Big Island, I think.
No, that's the one about Britain.
But here, that's Notes from a Small Island.
I don't think it's I think it's called The Lost Continent.
Okay, maybe.
Anyways,
Yeah.
Notes from a Big Island
yeah.
would be a funny book to call America. But anyways, like you're reading a road trip book that's 40 years old and it holds up pretty well. Like I think great travel writing does tend to be perennial.
Yeah.
You know, the prices of stuff and some of this diner closes, this one opens, but the general things hold true, I think.
Yeah, that's because why we travel has not changed. You know, you can still read Mark Twain's Innocents Abroad. You can still read Jack Kerouac's On the Road. You can still read Bill Bryson, Under the Tuscan Sun. Because regardless of where they are in the world, they're all talking about the human condition of longing and wandering and trying to find yourself and have a better understanding of the world, love, human relationships. That hasn't changed.
What's a travel book you think is overrated?
Eat, Pray, Love.
I couldn't get through Blue Highways. I didn't get it.
I thought Blue Highways was good writing, but it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
I also think Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck is a little boring.
Oh, okay.
Great writing, John Steinbeck, but I got through it, but it wasn't like, it didn't make me want to go travel.
Have you read Herodotus?
I have not.
Oh, he's like the first travel writer. He's the father of history and travel journalism. I'm reading this book now by this Polish journalist called Travels with Herodotus, and he's like retracing the and you're like, okay, 2,500 years separate one from the other, and a lot of the stuff is still there. Because what's so interesting too about the really ancient stuff is it's like some of these things were already in ruins. Like the pyramids were a site 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were already in ruins and forgotten and not understood. And it's fascinating when you read someone and you're like, oh, they're marveling at this old thing, and they're old to me.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it goes back to like the why we go doesn't really change, even though some of what we look at might be the same, but why we go is, and I think that's why travel writing lasts with the generations, because like why we yearn to like go and wander and find ourselves is still the same.
Well, that's, I think, one of the things that strikes you about Herodotus. He was one of the first people to be like, oh, you can just travel for travel's sake, right? The idea of like, obviously people made journeys for thousands of years, but the idea of like, oh, I just want to go see that, that didn't always exist. And the idea of being interested in other cultures and taking those other cultures seriously as being legitimate and valid, that's newer than you think it is.
Yeah. And then we lost it for a long time, through the Dark and Middle Ages. And we only, I forget the Muslim writer's name, IBN. He wrote that great book about his travels in like the 1600s, and that kind of then started that whole process again. And then you had, people traveling in the 1700s and, the great Euro trip of the aristocrats in the 1800s just to do it.
Yeah, and that's a part of the educational sort of process for someone, that you need to have seen and gone to certain places firsthand and not just read about them.
And just to see what's over the mountain for the sake of it.
Yeah. Okay, as a former Texas resident, what are your favorite things in Texas?
Austin, I love Austin. I mean,
That's not traveling.
yeah,
You
well,
live
okay,
here.
well, it's a great city. Texas barbecue is amazing, but I love Big Bend, Marfa, Hill Country. On the border of Louisiana and Texas, there's like a bunch of like bayous and like cypress, like
Swamps.
and swamps, and like I think that's underrated. Not a lot of people go there.
Trips you fly or trips you drive? Like, are you a road trip guy?
I'm a total road trip guy. I've driven across the country 5 times. Spent probably a collective 2 years driving around the U.S. and I've only seen a fraction of it still. I love a good road trip. I love to fly to countries that are good road trip countries.
Interesting. Yeah, my wife's least favorite book that I own is Road Food because it slows us down, and it always seems like it's on the way, and it's not even close to on the way, and then you're just like, oh, I mean, that was a good restaurant, but I don't know if it was worth 2.5 hours cumulatively.
You have Wild back there. I think that's another classic.
Of course,
I think
no,
that's
that's
an
great.
amazing book.
Desert Solitaire.
Yeah.
Have you read Life on the Mississippi?
No,
That's
I
a
don't
good.
think
He makes like a Mississippi riverboat, like a old style barge, and he just travels the whole Mississippi. Winkerbuck is really interesting.
Okay.
My favorite road trip book for America, I would say, is Ghost Rider, which is over there. It should be over here. I don't know. But the drummer for Rush has this series of tragedies. He loses his wife and his daughter like back to back, and he just gets on a motorcycle and he drives all across North America. Like Canada, America, Mexico. It's beautiful, haunting, amazing books.
I know what book I'll buy before I leave.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who has questions? Let's get into it. There you go.
I was just curious, since you were saying that AI is kind of taking out a lot of your traffic and possibly will take out some of your links to make some income work. Where are you going next to continue to make money from your blog?
Writing more books. For sure. But I think it goes back to like connecting with your audience in more in-person ways. So running events, we host a lot of webinars, like educational webinars now, running tours, even day tours around, I remember you said you lived in Dallas, so doing something local around Dallas, just like ways to meet your audience so they can support you face to face, sort of like buy the t-shirt, go see the concert rather than just stream the service.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I just have a couple questions. You said you've been traveling for about 20 years or so, like steadily?
Yes.
Yeah, so for work was most of my travel. And so when I would be places, like I spent a lot of time in China, Czech Republic, and it really was like the people there that you would go to a bar, have a beer, ask them, what do you do? And especially if you're by yourself, a lot of times you get taken in and you get to see things that you'll never experience if you were there with your family and stuff. So we talk about the change of travel, but it's still just about getting there, right? And just kind of immersing yourself in it. Do you agree with that? I went to Costa Rica and we did nothing but, we didn't even have a place to stay when we showed up, me and a buddy. And we just Airbnb'd it. Like we got there, we had to stay one night because we were late, and then we found a house, stay there, for a day or two, and then it's like, anybody coming in? No, we like this place. We'll hang out for a few more days. That's still kind of an easy way to travel. You agree?
Yeah, travel is really about the people and meeting them and learning about the local culture, and you get to do that by getting out of the tourist centers, just chatting to people at bars.
Correct.
And I think over the years, from when I started even 20 years ago to now, it's become a lot easier to meet locals through, these home exchange websites, these apps, Facebook groups, the sharing economy, and just hop into a bar and sit next to someone and chatting with them. And I think, when I started, I was pretty introverted. I still think I'm kind of introverted, but when I'm travel, you're sort of forced to like talk to someone, or you're just always going to be alone. So I'm always just like, hey, what's up?
I got you. I've never been accused of being introverted, but
Yeah.
so like to expound upon that, I mean, I've like I said, I've run, like I said, spent a lot of time in China, and I would just go, and like you talk about walking miles a day, right? I mean, or hours and hours. Some of the things you run into are, I won't say predatory, but they're there to make dollars, just like kind of what we're doing here, selling books and stuff, right? That you do have to be kind of aware of the fact that there are, the pre-described tours and such that I think a lot of times if you just kind of open up and just roll as it is easily, that you'll see a lot more and such like that. Do you disagree?
I would agree, and I think common sense goes a long way in terms of like if it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. When it comes to like tours and deals, like I mean, I fell for a scam the first time I went to Bangkok. The guy was like, "Oh well, me and my friend and I were trying to go to the Grand Palace, and we had come from the backside, so it looked closed." We were like, oh, I mean, maybe they closed for lunch, This guy was like, oh, yeah, they're closed for lunch, but I'll take you to these other temples, and then, we'll kind of wander around. And, of course, we went to see these other temples, but then we went to a tuck shop, and then we went to this place to buy jewelry, and we were like, no, we just want to go. And he was like, no, we'll stop here. It worked out for him, though, because my friend did buy a suit, so he probably got a great payday. But even though when we came back, we were like, wait, this isn't the entrance we came in. Oh, we went on the wrong side. To this day, I saw the most temples in Bangkok, and I lived in Bangkok for 2 years that day. So it kind of worked out.
Nice.
All right, who's next?
One last question. Canada?
I like Canada.
Huh? Are you from Canada?
No, I'm from Boston.
Boston?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, who's next? Neville, let's do it.
Hi, Matt. From the last time the book was, the first book to this book, has remote work impacted that a ton? Are you just seeing like people on perma vacation, a lot more young people at hostels? Has the demographic changed at all?
Yeah, the rise of remote work. The last book came out in 2017, and so since then a lot has changed. COVID especially promoting remote work and sort of digital nomadism. More and more hostels have like a place where you can co-work. There are organizations out there like Wi-Fi Tribe who will set people up in sort of group experiences where like you'll live in, say, Santiago, Chile for a month, and then you'll go to Athens for a month, and they kind of take care of the logistics for that. Way more co-working spaces around, and so I think there's a whole more global infrastructure that makes it easy for people to work from anywhere, and organizations that want to tap into that. Because maybe you want to go work in Buenos Aires, but you don't speak Spanish, so you don't know how to get set up. You're kind of afraid, like, how do I meet people? So these places like Wi-Fi Tribe take care of that for you, and they're immensely popular.
I have a question. What is this shit about me not being able to order 10 Years a Nomad for the bookstore?
Oh, I mean, do we have to talk about that on film?
Yes, I'm very upset about it.
Apparently my publisher isn't printing it anymore.
What? It's so good.
But I'm trying to get the rights back.
Oh.
So I'm in talks with them now.
So we might see a second edition of that?
Yeah, I'll probably just reprint it myself because, I mean, it's a great first edition. But they said it didn't sell enough, but if bookstores can't buy it, how's it going to sell? So it's sort of
that's such a standard publisher. Like, so there's a book we love about the French thinker Montaigne. It's one of my favorite biographies. It's by Stefan Zweig, who wrote The World of Yesterday. It's this lovely book. We sell 1,000 copies of it a year, not an exaggeration. And we tried to, we went to order more, and because we have a bunch of orders to fill, and they were like, we're out. And so I emailed, same thing with when I tried to order yours. So we end up reaching out to the publisher, and they go, oh yeah, we're going to do another edition of it in 2027, so we're not reprinting it. And I said, what? That's insane. So because you're going to come out with a new edition in 2027, you're just not going to have any editions for 2025 and 2026. So you're just not going to sell any for 2 years. So in the future, you could sell more copies of a new edition. And they're like, yeah, that's the plan. And so that's just classic publishing.
I was like, well, if no one can buy the book,
right,
you're not going to sell the book. Like, well, the book's not selling. Yeah, because no one. I was like, this explains why whenever I go into a bookstore, I can never find a copy of it because they only have what Amazon has.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm in the works to get this book back so I can just publish it.
Well, and also, though, the whole premise of a thing like Amazon is that even if you only sell 1 or 2 copies a year, they don't have to have the physical inventory on hand the way that we would, right? And so that's what the long tail was all about. But publishing, I think, is so weighted towards what's new. It's a constant problem with this bookstore because we only carry like our favorite books or classics. And even though they're classics, they're perpetually neglected by publishing because they want you to carry the newest title. And so there's this sort of newness bias in publishing that I think prevents like a lot of great classics from continuing to remain classics.
Well, I appreciate you calling my book a great classic.
Yeah.
But, you know,
we wanted it for the travel section. I was building out a travel section. I was like, oh, let's have 10 Years of Nomad, and literally impossible.
I mean, it's like, oh, aren't you happy that I sold the entire first print run of the book? So let's have some more books. They're like, no.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, I'll have to get it back.
You should. All right.
I'm working on
for
it.
that.
Yeah.
Brent.
Thank you. Top 3 hikes you've ever been on. What were the locations?
Top 3 hikes I've ever been on. I can do that pretty easily. The W Trek in Patagonia in Chile. That was an amazing multi-day trek. Absolutely stunning. Lives up to all the hype. The day hike to Machu Picchu. So you start on a trail near the train track. So you don't do the 4-day hike. I just did the 1 day, and that is really great because you get to see some like ancient cities that aren't on the main trail, and so they kind of have them to yourself. And then the 1-day hike in New Zealand over the Tongariro Crossing, which you start at like 6 a.m. and you get done at like 4. You go past Mount Doom, like where they filmed Mount Doom for Lord of the Rings. It's really awesome.
If you had $1,000 and 2 weeks, where would you go to make that $1,000 stretch the 2 weeks kind of all included?
All included, including flights?
Including flights.
You're making that really
Or
hard.
no flight. Maybe you have to drive.
Let's see. Including flights, I mean, we're going to use points for flights, so I'm going to make a loophole for this. 50 times. I'd probably go maybe to India. You can do that for like $40 a day. Southeast Asia or maybe Taiwan. Those are all really great places that are great value. That $1,000 will last you 2 weeks.
No, but like which of those 3?
Like what city you mean?
Down, like
Yeah.
by like how much is each accommodation, food, all that.
This is a ChatGPT question.
Yeah. I mean, how would you break down $1,000? That's very destination specific. So, like,
But
let's
she's
say
saying you got to pick a trip.
You are taking a trip.
if you're going to, let's say, I don't know, India, right? You're looking at probably $20 a day for accommodation, $5 to $10 for attractions, $10 for food, average another 10 to 15 for transportation over the course of your.
And what city are you choosing?
I'd probably do Delhi, Agra, and do like the main like little part like Rajasthan, which is.
What's a country or place you have zero interest in visiting?
North Korea. And why does everyone laugh? There's not much going on there. Second would probably be Saudi Arabia. It's just a lot of desert. But there are a few historic sites near the Jordanian border by the same people that made Petra. So I would be really interested in seeing that.
I'm going to Dubai on Sunday. What should I do?
Their old quarter, it has a lot of history still there, but mostly it's just like Vegas.
Yeah, that's kind of what I felt.
Yeah.
It felt very,
It's very Vegas-y.
yes.
Most of the expats that live there, there's like brunch clubs and like just a lot of drinking and nightlife and high-end food. You'd like the old quarter, but it's a very small part of the city.
Do you have any tips
I mean,
on...
the Burj Khalifa is very pretty to look at.
What do you think about sort of, like, I feel like a lot of the travel I do, I'm not picking the place, right? Because I'm going there, I'm giving a talk, or I have a meeting, or I'm on book tour. So, like, how do you think about being a good traveler when you're squeezing it in the midst of something else?
If I'm traveling for work and I don't have a lot of time, I really just try to pick like one or two things like I really want to see, like one site and maybe one restaurant. Because like it's hard to work and travel at the same time because your schedule is so inflexible, right? Like you have to go to this conference, right? You have to be there. You have to give your talk. You have to prep
You don't
for your
pick the
talk.
hotel.
Yeah. You know, you might not be near the old city. And so you have to think about the logistics. So I usually try to be like, what, if I have like 3 or 4 hours, what's one activity I can do in that? Just one.
I try to run in the morning when I get to a city, and then I see a bunch of stuff. Like I'll look on Google Maps or whatever, and I'll kind of like, okay, I ran by this, I saw this, whatever, and then I usually try to pick one thing to go back to on the way back. And then one of my other things is I try to find like the oldest restaurant. Like what's or the old, like find something that's just been around a long time. And that always, I feel like, gives you a sense, or in some cases literally like a flavor for the place.
Yeah. I would say you're doing great. That's
And then
what I
my
would
other
do.
rule is you can't eat all the meals in the hotel.
Definitely not.
Yes.
No. Yeah. You have to get out.
Yes.
Even if it's just someplace close by.
Yeah.
You just got to get out.
Anyone else?
I have another question. Yeah, I have an easy one for you. Where is a place that you haven't been yet that you're just can't wait to go to?
Oh, Mongolia.
Yeah?
It looks super cool.
Yeah?
I have a friend there right now, and it looks super. You know, I'm like, just like, I need to go to Mongolia.
Okay, we have a book in the bookstore by Jack Weatherford called Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World.
Oh, I love that book.
Incredible
I read
book.
that.
He lives in Mongolia. He retired there after,
Wow.
so I would reach out to him. But that's
Okay.
like one of
That-
that an amazing, mind-blowing book about a person that you think you're not going to like, and you have a certain perception of, and it's a much fuller, I think, more interesting picture of a person who, you know.
I read that book
shaped
because
the
it was
world.
on your book list.
Oh, there we go. See. Yeah.
I remember when I took my first trip, I didn't even have a cell phone. And now we have so much technology, and I think there's like a desire to maybe use technology less, and travel, I feel like in the past was a good way, but we're so connected. How have you seen your use of technology change over the last 20 years? And is there anything you're intentionally doing when you're traveling with technology?
People always ask me what my favorite travel apps are, and I tell them I only use one, Google Maps. It's the only app I use. I don't want an app to tell me where to eat. I don't want to book online. I'd rather just talk to people. And so I use Google Maps. If I do have to look for a restaurant around me, I look for the one with not the highest rating, but the most reviews. Because if 500 people were moved enough to be like, this place left an opinion on me, whether good or bad, it's probably going to be at least interesting. But I try to put down my phone. And I noticed that, I think this is because I started as a writer, not like a quote-unquote content creator. When I travel with my friends who are the Instagrammers or TikTokers, they have their phone out all the time. And I'm like, snap one photo, and like I'm like, all right, that's good enough for me. But even then, the thing that really bothers me the most is when I stay in hostels still, private room, not dorms. Everyone's on their computer, or like they're watching a show, or they're doing work, or like they have their phone out. Whereas like before, people would you'd have to like talk to people. And I think really the downside to travel is that it's made us less willing to just like chat people up at a bar or at your hostel or a restaurant, because you don't have to. You can just pull out your phone and text people from home. And so, like on the one side, it's made information more available. On the other side, it's separated us more.
Have you ever been in a dangerous or sketchy situation? And if so, how'd you get out of it? And what'd you learn from it?
Oh, yes. I was stabbed in Colombia.
Oh yeah, this is in the book.
Yes, this is also in the book. Why should I always have travel insurance? Yeah, I was, so in Colombia, they have this rule called no dar papaya, which it's their idiom for like, don't have anything sweet around or something like somebody would take. And that translates into also like, don't walk around with your phone, or like if you're eating dessert and not really eating it, and I will be like this, and you'll be like, why'd you do that? I'd be like, no dark papaya, man. Like, you're just gonna leave it around. But so I was really, really good about this rule until like the very end. I was there for a month. I got too comfortable, and walking out at sunset from this coffee shop, I was still texting a friend, and someone came to swipe my phone. But rather than like take it and keep running, he went backwards, so I like kind of jerked my hand, and I was like, oh, and I realized, oh, he was trying to rob me, and we tussled, and I kept yelling, no, help me, help me, help me, ayúdame, and people came, and he ran off, and then I was like, oh, getting punched sucks, because he was like hitting me, and it turned out, like, so people were like, no, let's sit down, let's look you over, and they took off my jacket, and I just was gushing blood. So he wasn't punching me, he was stabbing me. So I had 7 wounds on me. But it was just a box knife, so luckily I'm not dead. Because somebody else read my story, told me the exact same thing happened to them, and they're now paralyzed. Because he went really close to my spine, but luckily because it was a small blade, it didn't go deep. But unfortunately for this other person, no. What was the second part of the question? What did I learn from it?
What did you learn from it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Never drop your guard. Follow the rules. If like people are like, don't do this, constantly remember not to do that. And to always have travel insurance because they covered all the bills. Luckily in Colombia, like the bills aren't high. You know, like it was like $70 for all the medical treatment. But like, you know, had I been paralyzed, had I had to be evac'd out, like those bills would add up really quickly.
It's interesting, yeah, like when you have to be aware of things that you don't have to be aware of, where, like I was in Brazil earlier this year, I guess last year, and I'm sitting in the car driving to the airport and the window's down and the guy's like, you can't be on the phone with the window even partly down because someone will drive by on a motorcycle, reach into the car and take, and it's just like, oh yeah, when I'm in America, when I'm in a car, I'm in my cocoon and I'm safe.
Yeah.
But that's not true. Like, and so it's like, oh wait, I'd think about that and now you have just a different perception, a different awareness of something that maybe at home or in a different country or environment you don't have to be aware of.
Yeah, and in South America in general, there's just a lot of petty crime that you always have to be conscious of. Like locals I know in every country there will be like, don't go out with like jewelry, anything expensive. Friends in Colombia, they don't have AirPods that they take out. They wear like the cheapest headphones. Because if you have AirPods, it means you have a nice phone. So it's like, oh, well, let's take that, all of that. Driving in a taxi, like I won't have my phone out because I have had friends who got stopped at stoplights in, you know, Medellin, little tap, and it's a guy with a gun saying, give me the phone. And the taxi driver was like, give him the fucking phone, you know? And you give him the phone. You don't have to die over a phone. And so, yeah, like, traveling, like you have to just be a lot more conscious of things.
I've heard of a story when you were in Tokyo and you went to a really fine dining sushi spot. You didn't finish your meal. Could you share that story?
Oh, well, that's because I had tuberculosis.
What?
Yeah, so my friend here in the audience and I, we went to Tokyo for my birthday 2 years ago. We went to Sushi Jiro, like the Jiro Dreams of Sushi place, and I, for the first time in my life, could not finish an omakase. And the guy was like looking at me. I mean, this is like the hardest reservation to get. And I was like putting it in. It's because I, at the time, was sick with tuberculosis, so my appetite was not great. Luckily, my friends did not get TB from me. But yeah, I had to go home.
I got mono in Istanbul once.
Oh, well, tuberculosis is worse.
Didn't you bring home COVID? Weren't you one of the first people to get COVID also?
I was also one of the first people to get COVID too. When Texas opened up public testing to everybody through the Baylor system. I was the first person to test positive in the Austin area. So my lungs have gone through a lot of shit.
And that was 5 years ago, which seems insane.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, it's crazy.
All right. That'll be hard to top, but does anyone have any last question?
I've been all the questions about me.
You got any
getting
other weird
stabbed.
diseases?
No, first time I went traveling, I got severe food poisoning in Costa Rica. I had to be hospitalized for 3 days. My mother was like, well, guess you're never going away again. I was like, no, Costa Rica was great. Let's go back. I just don't eat eel in Costa Rica. That's all I would say.
I have a really quick one for you. Where is a place that you would go back to time and time again?
Oh, so many places, but I mean, just off the top of my head, Paris.
Lovely. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for
Matt's going to sign books. And we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks.